They say you should never marry someone who loves you more than you love them. But what if you don't even know they love you? What if the man you agree to marry out of pure desperation has been quietly in love with you since he was 14 years old? What if he stood in your father's barn as a teenage boy, hands shaking, writing letters he never planned to send, just so his feelings would have somewhere to live? And what if 15 years later, when your world is falling apart, he shows up with a solution, a proposal, and a calm voice, never telling you that you were the reason he came back? This isn't a story about obsession. It's about patience. It's about a love that never demanded to be chosen. And the woman who married a stranger, only to find out he had known her heart longer than she knew his name. The morning Clara Hawthorne signed her name on the marriage certificate, her hand did not tremble. It surprised her. She thought it might. But instead, her signature came out clean and steady, the handwriting of a woman who had already made peace with her decision. This wasn't romance. It wasn't some sweeping, heart-racing love story. This was survival. The bank had been pressing harder each month. Letters, warnings, polite threats wrapped in official language. Her father's medical bills were stacked in a drawer she avoided opening. The land had been in the Hawthorne family for 3 generations, and she was about to lose it. Thomas Weller had asked her to marry him. Not with flowers. Not with trembling declarations. Just quietly. "I can settle the debt," he had said one Tuesday afternoon, standing in her kitchen with his hat in his hands. "I can keep the land running. I can take care of what needs taking care of." And in return, Clara had asked, her voice cool, controlled. "An honest partnership," he replied. "Nothing more than you're willing to give." She studied him like a contract. The wedding was small enough to feel like a formality. A preacher, 2 witnesses, an uncertain sky hovering between clouds and sunlight. Clara wore her mother's dress. Thomas wore a freshly pressed white shirt and spoke his vows without stumbling. When it was over, they climbed into the wagon. 3 feet of wooden bench separated them. The horses filled the silence with steady hoofbeats. Neither of them tried to close the distance. Clara told herself it would be fine. She had handled worse things than an emotionless marriage. She had watched her father fade. She had negotiated with bankers who looked at her like she was already defeated. She could manage this too. But that first night, something shifted. She was carrying a box of her belongings down the hallway when she passed the parlor. Thomas was standing in front of a fireplace. Still. Completely still. He wasn't adjusting the mantle. Wasn't cleaning. He was staring at the old family portrait. The one taken when Clara was 14. She paused without meaning to. In the photograph, she sat between her parents, hair pinned neatly, chin tilted upward the way the photographer instructed. Thomas looked at that picture like he was remembering something. Not admiring. Remembering. A strange chill moved through her. She almost asked what he was doing. But something about the quiet weight in his posture stopped her. She kept walking. The first 2 weeks of marriage were polite. Thomas rose before dawn every morning. She would hear the back door close softly before the sky even turned gray. By the time she came downstairs, the fire would already be lit. Coffee waiting. He worked the fields with a kind of steady determination she couldn't ignore. Not frantic. Not lazy. Just consistent. He paid off the debt exactly as promised. Signed the paperwork without fanfare. Helped her father with careful respect. He never complained. Never criticized. Never asked her for affection. That part unsettled her the most. Most men who wanted something made sure you felt it. Thomas never did. He didn't reach for her hand. Didn't expect her to share his bed beyond quiet obligation. Didn't ask her to sit beside him in the evenings. It was like he had already accepted whatever portion of her he would receive. And that portion, apparently, was very small. It was her father who cracked the calm. One afternoon, he was unusually lucid. Color had returned faintly to his cheeks. His eyes were clearer. Clara was changing the bandage on his hand when he looked toward the doorway. Thomas stood there silently, having just brought fresh water. "He turned out all right," her father murmured. Clara glanced up. "Who?" "Thomas." There was familiarity in his voice. A history. You knew him? She asked carefully. Her father blinked, as if surprised by her presence. Course I did, he muttered faintly. Good boy. Worked hard. Then he drifted back to sleep. Clara stood frozen. Thomas had told her he'd only come to Millhaven 2 years ago. Her father spoke as if he'd known him much longer. That night, she lay awake longer than usual, listening, thinking. 3 days later, while clearing space in the barn for Thomas's tools, her boot caught against a warped floorboard near the back wall. She crouched down to fix it. The board lifted too easily. Underneath, tucked in the dry darkness, was a small tin box. Old, dust-coated, forgotten. Her pulse quickened. She didn't know why, but she knew this wasn't random. She lifted it carefully. The lid resisted at first, then gave with a soft metallic pop. Inside were letters. 15 of them, folded neatly, tied together with faded twine.
No envelopes. No postie.
Never sent. She opened the first one. The handwriting was youthful, uneven, uncertain. But the words... I don't know if you'll ever read this. I don't even know if I'll ever be brave enough to let you. But I saw you laughing by the creek today, and I thought, I hope I remember that sound for the rest of my life. Her breath caught. She flipped to the bottom. Just one letter.
T.
Her heart gave a strange, uncomfortable thud. She opened another. This one was dated 16 years ago.
She would have been 15.
Your father let me muck the stalls today. You brought water out around noon. You didn't look at me once. I don't blame you. I'm nobody worth noticing. But I stayed an extra hour, just in case you came back. Clara slowly lowered the page. Boys had worked the ranch every harvest season. Faces blurred together. She hadn't noticed them. Apparently, one of them had noticed her. Clara didn't confront him that night. She couldn't. Instead, she read the letters slowly over the next several evenings, one at a time, like she was handling something fragile and alive. The early ones were written by a boy who clearly didn't think much of himself. He described her from a distance. The way she tucked loose strands of hair behind her ear when she was thinking. The way she walked fast when she was irritated. The way she read books under the oak tree like the rest of the world didn't exist. He never stepped closer in those pages. Never claimed her. Never once wrote as if she owed him anything. Just observation, admiration, restraint. As the years passed in ink, the handwriting steadied. The boy became a young man. The tone shifted. Less longing, more acceptance. One letter written nearly 9 years ago stopped her cold. I heard you're doing well. That's enough.
It has to be.
That wasn't obsession. That was someone teaching himself to let go, but never fully succeeding. It happened on a Thursday evening. Clara came downstairs quietly and found Thomas sitting at the kitchen table. A single sheet of paper in front of him, a pen resting between his fingers. He wasn't writing. He was staring at the blank space like it held something dangerous. When he heard her step, he folded the page quickly and slid it beneath his palm. But not quickly enough. She had seen the handwriting. It matched. The fire cracked softly in the hearth. Neither of them spoke. The air felt thick, heavy with something unsaid. Clara turned and walked back upstairs without a word. But she didn't sleep that night. And by morning, she knew silence was no longer an option. When Thomas stepped inside after tending the horses, he stopped short. Clara was already seated at the table. The tin box sat between them, open, the letters stacked neatly beside it. For a moment, he simply looked at it, not shocked, not angry, just aware, like a man who always knew this day would come. He pulled out the chair across from her and sat down. The quiet stretched. How long were you here? She asked. When we were young. 2 summers, he answered. 13 the first time. 14 the second. Her stomach tightened. You worked for my father. Yes. He knew who you were. Thomas nodded once.
He did.
When you came back 2 years ago, I stopped by the house, he said. Your father recognized me right away. And when you proposed, he knew it was me. The realization hit differently now. Her father had known. He had trusted this man. trusted him enough to say nothing. The letters, she said quietly. Thomas exhaled slowly. I left them under that floorboard the last summer. I didn't know what else to do with what I felt. I didn't have the nerve to give them to you, and I didn't want to carry them around like some kind of foolish reminder. So you buried them? Yes. Did you come back for them? He held her gaze. I came back because I heard the land might not stay in your family much longer. He paused. And because I never really stopped wondering how you were. There it was. Not dramatic, not polished, just honest. Clara's voice was steady, but her heart wasn't. I need you to answer me truthfully. I will. Did you marry me because you felt sorry for me or because you still loved me? He didn't look away. Both things can exist at the same time, he said calmly. Your situation was real. You needed help. But I won't sit here and pretend you weren't the reason I came back. The room felt smaller. I didn't expect anything, he continued. Not then.
Not now.
I wasn't asking for love in return. I just wanted to make sure you were safe. Safe. That word undid something inside her. You never asked for anything, she whispered. I didn't think I had the right. His voice lowered. I learned early on that wanting someone doesn't make them yours. Silence. Outside, the wind moved through the trees. A horse shifted in the paddock. The world continued like nothing monumental was happening inside that kitchen. But for Clara, everything was shifting. She stood and walked toward the window. The land stretched wide and familiar. The fence Thomas had repaired. The fields he had restored. The barn where a 14-year-old boy once hid letters beneath the floor. She thought about all those years. The silence between letters. The restraint. The patience. Love that never demanded to be chosen. Love that simply endured. And suddenly something clicked into place. She hadn't married a stranger. She had married someone who had known her laugh before she knew his name. Someone who had loved her when she was awkward and unaware. Someone who chose her, not when she was thriving, but when she was drowning. She turned back slowly. Why didn't you ever tell me? She asked. He swallowed once. Because I didn't want you to feel cornered, he said. I didn't want your gratitude to get confused with affection. Her chest tightened. And if I never loved you? She asked softly. His answer came without hesitation. Then I'd still be glad I married you. That was it. That was the moment. Not a declaration of need. Not desperation. Just quiet devotion. Clara crossed the room. Slowly. Deliberately. She stopped in front of him. For weeks, they had existed like polite business partners. 3 feet of space in the wagon. Careful conversations. Measured distance. But something in her chest had finally shifted. You stayed an extra hour, she said quietly. Just in case I came back. He blinked, surprised she remembered the exact line. Yes. Her voice softened. I'm sorry I never noticed you. Thomas gave the smallest shake of his head. You weren't supposed to. That was the final thread. The final wall. She reached for his hand. He went still at the contact, like he wasn't sure it was real. You don't have to keep loving me quietly, she said, her voice trembling now. Not anymore. He searched her face carefully. I don't want you to feel obligated. I don't, she interrupted. And for the first time since signing that marriage certificate, her eyes were shining for a reason that wasn't exhaustion. I don't know when it happened, she admitted. Maybe when you moved my father's chair without being asked. Maybe when I realized you never once tried to make me feel owned. She stepped closer. But I know this. I don't feel alone anymore. That broke him. Not dramatically. Not loudly. But something in his restraint finally cracked. He stood slowly. Carefully. As if she might disappear if he moved too fast, he pulled her into his arms. And this time, there was no 3 feet of space.
No question.
No careful distance. Just warmth. Just relief. She felt the steady rise and fall of his breathing against her shoulder. 15 years of unspoken love resting between them. I don't want a practical marriage, she whispered against his chest. Then what do you want? He asked softly. She pulled back just enough to look at him. I want a man who stayed an extra hour. His composure finally gave way to something brighter.
Hope.
And he kissed her. Not rushed, not desperate, but certain. The kind of kiss that says, I've been waiting a long time, but I can wait a little longer if I have to. The tin box stayed on the kitchen shelf after that. Not hidden, not buried. They didn't need to read the remaining letters, because now they were writing something new together. And for the first time since she signed her name in steady ink, Clara Hawthorne wasn't surviving. She wasn't managing. She wasn't settling. She was choosing. And this time, she chose him.